Hi everyone, it's Michelle. Today I'm going to be working with a new product from Hero Arts from their most recent catalog, and I'm going to be making an interactive slider card. So just to start with, I picked one of the images from this stamp set. The one I'll be working with is the little snail that's really cute. So I'm just stamping it on some paper right now with Memento ink because I'm going to be coloring this in with Copic markers. So I'm just using my MISTI to double stamp this to get a really nice solid black outline. And then I pulled out my Copic markers and I'm just going to be coloring this in really quickly. It's nothing too fancy. Of course, you can use any markers or coloring media that you want for this. But I just did this today because it's a little bit faster for me. And once I was done coloring that, I just fussy cut this with a little bit of a white border just because there are some parts of this image that would be really hard to cut right up against the edge. And I pulled out a card base here. This is a light blue card base, and I've already pre-cut some things. So I have this grass border, and that die is from Sweet Stamp Shop. And I also have a little strip of that same green cardstock that I've cut this little slider tab from, and this die is also from Sweet Stamp Shop. These are part of the collection of dies that I designed for them. So I'm just figuring out how to do this because honestly I am not the best at interactive cards, and that's why these dies sometimes come in handy because it just makes one of these things easier rather than trying to do everything by hand. So just bear with me as I figure this out, but I'm making it even more complicated on myself because I want to hide this slider behind the grass. So I have to attach this snail onto a little piece of scrap cardstock so that it has the correct height, so that the part that slides will be behind the grass border, but the actual snail will be above it slightly. And then along with that snail that's going to slide, I have this tab that's going to be pulled out that's also going to reveal the sentiment when it's pulled out. So I just cut this strip to about 3/4 of an inch, and I pulled out one of the sentiments from this set that fits perfectly in this size, and I thought it also worked well with the image. It says, "Just wanted to give you a poke." So I'm just figuring out the correct positioning of this so that when it's pulled out you can see the whole sentiment. You want to make sure that you don't pull it out and only half of the sentiment is showing. So it just takes a little playing around with, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp this with my MISTI again with black ink. By the way, as a side note, if you see this huge new ring on my finger, it's because I just got engaged last weekend, so that's just something fun. If you want to see some photos of the proposal, go ahead and check out my Instagram. Getting back to the card, now that I have that sentiment stamped, I've attached the snail with a little extension to that sentiment strip. So now I'm just going to be playing around with kind of creating a track for this slider, and you can see I've also put a foam dot that will act as a stopper so that the strip doesn't come all the way out. And to create the track for the sentiment strip so that it doesn't slide all over the place, I'm going to be using some really skinny double-sided tape. I think this is like 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, so it's super skinny. And this is just because I didn't leave myself much space, honestly, on this little strip at the bottom. So if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you can probably just make a wider strip at the bottom. But anyway, this was good enough for me to have just enough space to have that tape. So you want to have the whole bottom of the strip taped, but at the top you don't want to tape across the entire width, because if you did, the top part of the snail wouldn't be able to slide. So you can see how I'm leaving a little opening on the top there. So this part can be a little finicky. I want to make sure that the strip doesn't get stuck to the tape, so I just put some temporary painter's tape there just to hold it in place while I flip it over and stick that down to my card base. And now that that first piece is done, I'm going to go in with foam tape this time for a little bit of dimension so that the top strip of grass that I have here leaves enough space for that little foam square I have to move around. So now I'm taking some double-sided tape, and I've actually doubled up this foam tape, so I folded it on itself, so this is 2 layers of foam tape. So you can see how I'm doing that, and then I'm cutting it into really skinny strips. And I'm going to use this double layer of foam tape to create an additional track above and all around the little slider mechanism. And again, this just takes a little bit of trial and error. This was my first slider card in a while, so I kind of just had to play around with it. But the more you make these, the easier it becomes. So once I've surrounded that whole area with foam tape, I'm putting the top layer of grass on top. And then you can see the sentiment strip just comes out nicely and slides back in and doesn't come out too far. Now I'm just taking a little gel pen and writing the words pull on the edge of the strip just so the person who gets the card knows to pull it out. And once I have that written, I'm using my corner chomper and I'm using the 1/4 inch corner rounder to just go around and make this strip look a little more polished. Then I thought the rest of the card needed a little bit more interest in the sky, so I pulled out this cloud outline die that I have from W+9 and just filled up the space really nicely, but it's still very subtle against that light blue. So I'm just using my glue pen to go in and add little dots of glue to stick this on. And then as a last finishing touch, I went in with some jewels from Lucy's Cards. I believe these are the ice jewels. And I'm just putting them in the grass so that they kind of look like little dewdrops. So again, this is a really subtle addition, but I think it adds a lot to the card and just adds a little bit more texture. So there's the finished card. You can see how the snail moves along with the sentiment strip. And it's just a little fun extra thing to add to your cards. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and head over to my blog if you want to see the full supplies list. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.